All right, well, welcome to another episode of Bicycle Rider YouTube channel. And today we're going to be taking a deep dive into the Marin Four Corners. And here on the Bicycle Rider, we really try to review products that, one, we ride ourselves. And this bike has definitely been ridden. It's just been a very impressive bike. So you'll probably see several videos on this bike. But we try to review products that are one, a good quality build that we've tested ourselves, and also a good value for the dollar ratio. And this Marin Four Corners has proven itself to be very rock solid, yet perform extremely well. We're going to do a couple videos on this bike, but this one's more of a deep dive into what this bike is. And this is the Marin Four Corners. It is more of an adventure gravel bike, commuter bike. So it's even hard to describe what it is because it's so good at multiple things. And it is a very sturdy build. It's built out of a 4130 chromoly butted steel frame and fork. And I am not a metal scientist, but I know that this bike feels good, especially over some of the aluminum models. It seems to be more robust than maybe some of the carbon models, and it's hard to compare coming to the steel with carbon sometimes because, you know, there's a lot of big price difference there. So as far as a heavy duty steel frame that feels good, and the old saying steel is real really does happen, because it seems like when I come back to steel frames I always am smiling because it just feels right. This, like we say, is a heavy-duty bike, but it's not a heavyweight bike. It's not a feather-light bike either, but when I compare this bike to maybe some of the bikes that we have in the background, like that truck commuter bike right there, and I'll do that later, but this bike is lighter than that bike, and this is a whole lot more bike. This is more of a modern geometry. You can see they've kind of got a shorter rear triangle, so it does, even though it's an adventure bike, it will pick up speed very quick. It's got that taste of performance to it. And that's one of the reasons that my cameraman, Gary, picked this bike for his personal bike. And we're going to go into a little bit deeper into, you know, why we like this bike so much. But I think a lot of it starts from the ground up. And the frame is basically the roots of the bike. And this bike has a fantastic frame. You can actually, since it's a gravel bike or an adventure bike, it gives you a lot of options as far as water bottles, mounts, and whatnot, the accessories you might want to put on this bike. You can put up to 6 water bottles on this bike, which is quite awesome when you're out there on a big ride and you need water. This bike is going to let you drink water and make sure you don't go thirsty with option for 6 mounts. I mean, that's pretty incredible. And that's on a medium-sized frame. So I'm not even sure on a large frame you might even have more. On a small frame you might have maybe 1 less mount or something. But it definitely will hold as much water as you want to put on your bike. And it does have all the mounts for racks and fenders and everything else, because this is really a good touring style bike. So they wanted to make sure that you had options for whatever type of rack system or carrying system for your gear you wanted to go. And that comes all back to the frame. This frame is heavy duty enough to carry fully loaded without having you know, deviation on the frame. And I've seen some people, even last night we were on a group ride, and there was a pretty heavy, strong guy, and he was flexing his frame left and right every time he started putting the power down. And you'll meet Gary, my YouTube partner and cameraman, eventually, and he's a very powerful rider himself. And when Gary puts the power down on this bike, there's no problem with his bike flexing. It's really a very nice made bike, and that's like I said, that's the roots of the bike. That's where it all starts from. But Marin has built a very sturdy build onto this frame. We've got a Shimano Sora triple chain ring up front, and you know, triple chain rings are great when you're packed down, when you're going on an adventure, because you don't know what kind of grade you're gonna run into. And you know, if you don't have enough gears on your bike, you know, get you walking rather than riding. We've got the Sora rear derailleur. We've got a 9-speed steel cog set. So we're talking about heavy duty components that aren't complicated. With a 9-speed, I mean, even if you're at a little bike shop in the country, you could usually get the replacement parts you need if you happen to need something with a 9-speed. And it also keeps the price point low. And let's go ahead and talk about price point with this bike. This is about a $1,000 bike. I've noticed that the 2020s have gone up in price a little bit, and I'm not sure, you know, maybe what's changed. Could be tariffs. I don't know. But for $1,000, you get a lot of bike with the 4 corners. So as far as your running gear, we're talking about something rock solid and has enough gears that it's going to let you climb, it's going to let you carry heavy. And for Gary likes to get speed out of this bike. We do a lot of group rides, and Gary is a kind of a social animal, so he doesn't want to get dropped off the back because his bike's not going to be fast enough. And this bike is definitely able to, you know, hit speeds. I know Gary can do, you know, what is it, over 20 miles an hour, Gary, before you start running out of gear. So, you know, 20 mile an hour at a decent cadence, yeah, like a 50, 52. Your cadence at that kind of speed. He's not spun out, so really there's more room for Gary to go faster if he wanted to. But you know, when you're talking about a bike like this, we're not talking about a full-on, you know, road racer bike. So you know, if you go 20 mile an hour, 21 mile an hour, and we're talking about on flat ground, you know, that's a good range, especially with the gears that Gary has to use if he's got to climb a hill or something. So as far as running gear, you know, it's rock solid down here. It's got the Sora up front, and there has never been a problem shifting or braking with this system. Everything just seems to work well. And you can see it's got a few scars on it because I cut Gary off on one of the local rides, and he went down pretty hard on this bike. But it just shows that this kind of bike can take a licking and not fall apart. You know, some of the lighter, more racy shifters and something, I don't think would have taken the punishment that this Sora can take. So, you know, it's very robust. One big factor about this bike that we really like is this longer head tube, and that makes the bike comfortable. It kind of takes away from the aggressive position and puts you more into a position of comfort, so you can spend hours on this bike and not feel like you're hunched over. And sometimes you look at the style of this bike with a drop bar, you might think that, you know, that's not the kind of bike you want because you don't feel like being hunched over. But really, the way this bike sits, you're more in an upright position, which helps you with line of sight, seeing obstacles, you know, maybe on a gravel road or a trail or out in the country, instead of being like this. So just because it has drop bars on it, take a good look at this long head tube. And this, I'm about 5'9", and this is a medium-sized frame, and that is a nice long head tube. So, you know, it keeps your neck from having to, you know, tilt down like this. You know, I've got a good line of sight and I feel comfortable. I could ride this bike all day. Gary is not a lifetime bicycle rider, so we wanted to make sure Gary was comfortable and had a bike that was comfortable, but yet gave him several different hand positions. And this bike does that. You know, at first when I mentioned this bike to Gary, he wasn't sure, because you see a drop bike, you think it's a 10-speed or a road racer. But really, the geometry of this bike keeps you friendly, yet the build and being able to get into aerodynamic position also lets you keep up with the group. And that's what, you know, Gary did a big group ride this morning. And even though Gary's not a veteran cyclist, he was able to keep up with the group and didn't get spit off the back. Where you saw a lot of guys on a mountain bike or a flat bar bike, you know, just struggling so hard that you know, and not really enjoying the ride, where this bike is efficient. And efficiency is one of the reasons that Gary decided to stick with the 700C tire combination. And this bike will accommodate the 650B if you want a more subtle ride. It'll take some pretty wide 650B tires, so you get a lot of air volume, a lot of traction. But Gary wanted the efficiency, so we stuck with the 650B, and we did put some upgraded wheels on his bike. One, because we're testing these out for Crank Brothers. This is Crank Brothers' new gravel wheel set, and there's a few advantages to the Crank Brothers wheels that Gary really, you know, kind of dug into and said that he wanted to. So we are testing this set of wheels out. We're going to go to a different video on these wheels, but so far the Crank Brothers gravel wheel set has really been nice. And on this we have got a 700 by 42 Specialized tire on it. And Gary chose this tire because he wanted, you know, even though it's an adventure bike and a gravel bike, Gary's doing a lot more, you know, commuting and in-city riding, and this is more of a smooth rolling tire with a little bit of tread and plenty of air volume. So it's a good combination. I think Gary's pretty happy with the Specialized Pathfinder Pro tire. And we're saving the WTB tires that came stock on this bike for when we do some more gravelly type of stuff this winter when gravel starts getting hot. So, you know, we're really happy with this bike. Of course, one real important thing on a bike is the brakes. And this bike comes stock with a TRP, and I think if you research TRP, everybody will realize the TRP brakes are really coming into play, and they're putting a lot of technology into their brakes. So it comes with a TRP brake system. It is a cable operated brake system rather than the hydraulic brake system, but it is got a lot of stopping power and a lot of modulation. So if you think that a cable brake system can't give you the performance you need and you need to upgrade to hydraulic, believe me, I'm a fan of hydraulic brakes, but the cable operated brake system has a lot of advantages too. And the TRP brake system that is on this bike really does work fantastic. I don't think Gary's ever had a problem stopping this bike, and you know, when you're riding in a group and people are stopping in front of you and you might be talking to a girl or something, I mean, there's times when you have to quick stop, and this bike seems to quick stop and do it with some modulation, so you're not always just having to lock things up. You can slow down without having your back wheel come off the ground because it's either all or nothing. This has a lot of modulation in the middle to keep things safe. So there's never been a problem with the braking, and you know, all in all, this has been a fantastic bike to keep Gary interested in cycling, and I think it'd be great. Like I said, I'm a veteran cyclist, and I'm going to buy one of these for myself because I think it rides so good. I'm going to use a lot for commuting and some adventure stuff I want to do as well. You know, Marin's got its own branded handlebar and cockpit here, and it's got a nice flare. It's not over flared where it feels weird. You know, it's just a nice good flare so your knees aren't hitting if you've got to stand up. It's a very comfortable bar, and the grip tape that they put on is fantastic. A lot of times that's one of the first thing I'll do is upgrade grip tape. On this bike, it's just a really good cushy grip tape that, you know, probably absorbs a lot of vibration. So all in all, I would just like to say that, you know, Marin has done a really nice job of putting this bike together at a fantastic price. And we're going to go into some of the ride characteristics of this bike and compare it to, you know, some of the other bikes that you could have in your garage, because this bike really can replace several different bikes. So, you know, my wife is happy about that because I've got a lot of different style bikes laying around in the garage that I should be able to replace with one bike like this that does multiple things very well. But the Marin Four Corners, and this is their base model. They do have an upgraded model, and I think it's, you know, I saw it on the GovVelo site at around $2,000. So $1,000 for the base, $2,000 for the upgraded model. And I think the 2020s have gone up in price a little bit, but we're still talking a lot of value for the dollar when it comes to a bike like this. So I'm going to end this video now about the Four Corners build, and we're going to go more into a comparison about it against some other bikes here in the near future. All right, thank you.